Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Banyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, what is it going to take for President Cyril Ramaphosa to act against Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane? Why does the president need to be forced to act? The DA has today laid a criminal complaint against her, but the ANC is calling this action populist. The ANC Chief Whip, Mdumiseni Ntuli, faces the nation tonight. Also on the show, why does the Zambian government want former President Edgar Lungu to be buried in Zambia, even though the family wants him to be buried here in South Africa? The Zambian government has since successfully interdicted the funeral from taking place. The Zambian Minister of Information and Media, Cornelius Mweetwa, joins us tonight. And then later, what are the terms of reference for SCOPA's investigation into the Road Accident Fund? SCOPA announced earlier today that it's adopted the terms of reference and will commence with the inquiry in September. The chair of that inquiry, Songezo Zibi, joins us. But first, my comment. So, the DA has laid criminal charges against Higher Education Minister Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane. The party accuses her of lying to Parliament when she falsely claimed an independent panel advised her on the appointments she made for SETA board chairpersons. Remember, the person she claimed actually to be the chair of that panel came out to say he wasn't involved in the process. Here's the DA's Federal Executive, Helen Zille, speaking earlier today.
We're here today for the simple reason that President Ramaphosa refuses to be as good as his word and act against corruption, act against criminality in our parliament.
Now, let's remind you of what happened to give you some context. So let's take a few steps back. Minister Nkabane appointed board chairpersons of SETAs, right? The list of her appointments was leaked, revealing that she has appointed Gwede Mantashe's son and Gwede Mantashe's advisor as board chairpersons of two of the SETAs. Now, what was curious about these appointments was that the list was riddled with politicians. She had appointed to the boards of SETAs politically connected people. Curiously, though, she appointed Mantashe's son and Mantashe's advisor. Do you remember which minister she worked closely with before becoming Higher Education Minister? Gwede Mantashe. She was Gwede Mantashe's deputy at Minerals Resources, and after being promoted to be Minister of Higher Education, she then appoints Mantashe's son and advisor as board chairs. Is it a coincidence? Now, she tried to defend the appointments. In fact, when she was asked tough questions, she withdrew the appointments of the board chairpersons. She said that the decision to withdraw follows calls of greater transparency. But she wasn't off the hook just yet. Parliament wanted to know who advised her to make such appointments, because even Parliament was concerned about those appointments. And she claimed that it was an independent panel. She was asked for the names of the independent panel members, and she was refusing to disclose them until pressure mounted.
So it is not compulsory for me to disclose the independent assessor, the independent panel that is assisting the minister. I'll first find out from them, get consent, if they are happy that I disclose their names. I cannot just come here and disclose information. I need to comply with the relevant legislation. I'm not going to respond to yes or no, unfortunately.
That's the attitude that she gave to parliamentarians who were trying to hold her accountable and ensure that there's transparency. In fact, it was a legal opinion that advised her to release the names of this independent panel. Do you remember this moment when she appeared in Parliament?
In your own view, Minister, what makes a person credible? When you say this one, Tebogo chair, is credible or is not credible, what makes him credible? In your own view? Minister?
What makes a person credible, Chair, is exactly how it is defined when you Google. By encyclopedia, you'll see what it means. It's exactly that.
You are not going to answer us. You are not going to answer us, Minister.
I've responded, Chairperson.
You don't make this stuff up. That's a minister being held accountable in Parliament, an institution that is constitutionally obligated to hold her accountable. South Africans and even the president were clearly disappointed by her behavior, her belligerent attitude towards Parliament. The president even called her out and asked her to explain herself. And when she finally disclosed the list of the independent panel, it turned out not to be an independent panel after all, because among the names are Department of Higher Education staff members, which then raises the question about the panel's independence. The minister claimed that the chair of the so-called independent inquiry was senior counsel, Advocate Terry Mutau. But that was a lie, because Advocate Mutau came out publicly to say he didn't chair that panel, as claimed by the minister. He said the minister intended to appoint him as chair of the committee, but that never materialized. So he was surprised, like many people, that suddenly the minister is now including his name on the list of the panel members. Now, the minister was forced to apologize publicly to Advocate Mutau for, and I quote here, any inconvenience, reputational discomfort or misunderstanding that may have arisen, because she was caught lying and exposed. She misrepresented Advocate Mutau's role because she could clearly see that without the advocate's name, that panel was never going to pass the test of independence. Well, guess what? Even in the letter where she apologized to Advocate Mutau, she misrepresented the truth. Then Advocate Mutau said he would deal with the matter with the Portfolio Committee in Parliament. Now tell me, when a minister has behaved in such a manner, how do you justify the fact that her boss has not even reprimanded her or held her accountable? Because we don't know of any action taken against her. The Ethics Committee in Parliament is now investigating her. SASCO and other student organizations are also calling for her to step down. Her boss, the president, what is he doing? The DA has now laid criminal complaints against her, and they say that they won't support her department's budget. The question we're asking you tonight, though, is do you agree with the position the DA has taken in this matter? And how do you expect the president to act against the minister as far as her actions are concerned? You can share your thoughts with us by sending us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you are sending that voice note from. Please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. All right, let's start the conversation now to pick up on that story with the ANC Chief Whip, Mdumiseni Ntuli, who joins me now in studio. Mdu, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Good evening to the viewers at home
so
and
the
elsewhere
DA,
in our country.
The DA has laid criminal complaints against the Higher Education Minister. Do you accept that they are right about being concerned about the minister's actions in Parliament?
I think all of us as parliamentarians, we were very concerned about the developments that have unfolded following the minister's appearance before the Portfolio Committee. So certainly we all have been very concerned. And what really comforted us was that already the matter has been reported to the Ethics Committee of Parliament, which is an institution within Parliament that has the authority to deal with misdemeanors or conduct that are inconsistent with what is attended to those of us who are members of Parliament.
Yeah.
I do believe that I think the DA is really taking a position that, in my own view, should not be an immediate position to be assumed, let alone by parties in the GNU, in a sense that you are part of the government of national unity. A matter has been taken to the Ethics Committee. There's no doubt that the Ethics Committee is credible. It has a capacity to deal with the issue. I would have expected that all of us would await the outcome of the Ethics Committee in Parliament, and out of which we can then decide whether more than what the Ethics Committee will determine is required for us to satisfy the requirement of justice being seen to have been done on the matter.
And Mdu, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. The minister lied here. Surely there must be action taken even by her own party, no?
That's correct. The minister misrepresented the facts in terms of what she said in Parliament, in the Portfolio Committee. And I'm quite certain that the leadership of the ANC in our head office is in a way somehow handling the matter.
Well, they're quiet. They're not saying anything. You are the caucus leader.
Well, some of the issues, Clement, when you deal with some of the problems, you don't deal with them in public, but you report about them in public, having taken a position and decided on the corrective measures.
You are the caucus leader in Parliament. Have you asked her to explain her actions as the Chief Whip? And how did she explain her actions to you? Were you satisfied with her explanation?
I've met with the study group on many occasions, including with the minister and the chair of the Portfolio Committee. And it was quite clear to me as I listened to the conversation that something terribly wrong happened in terms of her conduct in the Portfolio Committee, and including how she articulated the issues relating to the formation of the panel, or the so-called independent panel, which is currently in question for obvious reasons. So I wasn't satisfied with the clarification provided. I listened to it, but I said, well, the matter is before the Ethics Committee. It has been reported to the ANC in the headquarters. You have submitted the report to the President. Maybe let's not all of us try to be seen to be doing something about it. Let's allow the ANC, which has deployed all of us to Parliament, to deal with the matter, in the same way that the President was appointed into the executive is starting the report to submit it, out of which I'm sure the President will decide his own actions.
Do you not have a responsibility as the caucus leader to act? I mean, you have to provide leadership over members of Parliament that belong to the ANC. Is this the manner with which you expect your caucus members to behave in Parliament? And if not, do you not have a code of conduct as the ANC on what you expect the people you deploy there to behave and to act?
Well, certainly the conduct, Clement, is completely at variance with what is expected to those of us who are members of the ANC in Parliament. But our own view was that let's not have many processes unfolding simultaneously. We are members of Parliament. Yes, we are a caucus of the ANC, but in Parliament. We too belong to the Portfolio Committee on Ethics, which is now seized with the matter, and which I'm quite certain in the next few weeks or so.
But is there no code of conduct for ANC members in Parliament? For instance, there used to be questions around whether ANC members can go and just vote in support of a motion when the ANC as a party has decided that the position the party takes is we vote against. Is there no code of conduct that says, when you behave in a manner that is inconsistent with our expectations as a caucus in Parliament, these are the kind of actions that are going to be taken?
Primarily, we use the constitution of the ANC, because the constitution of the ANC is not only talking about members in general, it also reflects on what is expected to those who are members of provincial legislatures and Parliament. In a situation like this, you asked a question earlier on if I've had a discussion with the minister, and obviously what was my understanding of what she said. Maybe let me make an addition to say, having listened to her, we came to the conclusion as a leadership caucus that definitely there's something wrong here. And I needed to make her aware that the ANC will therefore be in full support of the processes that are going to unfold in the Ethics Committee. And that is the first step that we thought is necessary for us to support as the African National Congress, even before we can then decide whether she must appear before the disciplinary committee of the African National Congress in Parliament. But we thought the first step to pursue, support the process of the Ethics Committee. It will give a report, very credible report, because it has investigation, and it will present a report and with findings. And the ANC will then decide whether the sanction meted against her by the Ethics Committee suffices, or we think more needs to be done.
But then you can't relegate your responsibilities. Here's the challenge. As the ANC, you believe that we must have leaders that are ethical.
That's correct.
As a party, you have responsibilities. Parliament is a separate institution that you are part of. They have responsibilities and how they expect members of parliament to act.
Sure.
Why are you relegating the responsibility to parliament? That's like saying, if you are found guilty of something, God forbid, and then the ANC says, now this person must go to court, we'll hear what the courts say. When the ANC has a responsibility, that's why you've got an integrity commission. That's why you've got a disciplinary hearing. So when the minister has behaved in such an embarrassing, disgraceful manner, you can't wait for the ethics committee. There are processes of the ANC that also have to kick in. And unfortunately, we're not getting any sense that the ANC is going to act against her.
Sure. Clement, I'm not speaking on behalf of the ANC Ntuli House. The first thing that I needed to do as the Chief Whip when an occurrence like that unfolded is to report the matter formally to the ANC, which was done.
And to recommend disciplinary hearing.
And to say that, in my own view, certain actions will have to be taken to deal with this current situation.
What is a disciplinary action?
Well, when we report to the head office, we report what we have understood to have been an offense or something that has been negative.
Which you agreed is an offense.
Negative against the ANC. And we say this requires an action. It's now incumbent upon the ANC whether the matter is referred to the disciplinary committee or the integrity commission.
But you know the constitution of
the ANC. But it's not me as a chief whip of the ANC who make referral of any of my colleagues, either to a DC or the integrity commission.
But you know the constitution of the ANC.
I know it.
This minister has behaved inconsistent with the constitution of the ANC. That's not how the ANC expects its members to behave.
That's quite correct.
So when something like that happens, there has to be a disciplinary hearing. There's not going to be a pat on the back and says, oh, Mdu, as the Chief Whip complained, and therefore we're not going to follow up on this. That would be crazy for the ANC to look at your recommendation that says the minister has misrepresented facts and not do anything about it. Do you accept that?
I don't think the ANC will do nothing about it. So I think what is at issue now, which you are raising, correctly justified, is that up to today the ANC has not indicated its own course of action.
Which is weird.
But that there would not be any decision taken against a behavior like that. I don't think that...
So we wait for the disciplinary
the ANC
action
is going to
then.
say, no, we close our eyes and we leave that. I don't think so. I think the organization is going to do something about it.
Here's the challenge with the ethics committee. They take time. They take time to investigate. I mean, let's take Dipuo Peters, for instance. She was a member of parliament. The ethics committee came in, found her guilty. What did the ANC do about it?
My own experience, Clement, now in Parliament is that the ethics committee has not been taking long to deal with matters before it. Very quick. I can tell you that we've had members who did not disclose their members' interest in the last quarter, which is about a month or two ago, and those members were taken before the ethics committee. Findings were reported to Parliament 2-3 weeks ago. My own experience with the way in which we work in Parliament now is that it doesn't take long. I would imagine that the ethics committee within the next a few weeks or so, I'm sure the problem now may be that we're all seized with the budget processes, but clearly the committee is not going to take longer to deal with a matter that is so serious and sensitive like this one.
The president has gone quiet, and that's her boss. And I know you don't speak on behalf of the president.
Sure.
But as the ANC, what do you think this sends out there to members of the public, people who are watching us now, when they see a minister who behaves like that, and the president, the ANC, that is still quiet and hasn't communicated what kind of action it will take against her, and her boss, the president, has just gone to ground, hasn't said what kind of action he will be taking. What do you think that communicates to South African, the message that communicates to people watching us?
Look, it depends on what we define as a process that has been too prolonged. Let me tell you why I'm making that statement. President has taken a decision a week ago about a deputy minister who went overseas in February without a permission. My understanding is that if you are a president, in that position of the president, as he had done when he was, shortly before he departed for the G7, he requested a report from the minister, which I suppose would have been provided or was provided immediately when he came back. Now, we would expect that once the president received the report like that, he's going to study it, he's going to give his own response, and he's then going to have to take a position about how to decide on the basis of the merits of the report before him. How long that process takes, the concern that we are raising that maybe it has taken too long, given the fact that it's almost a month, if we're not just above a month, since the occurrence of that problem in the portfolio committee. to the extent that we are worried about the period within over the past 20 or 30 days or so, I get your point. You are justified. But I think we need to give President time, because when he takes a decision on matters that he has a responsibility to decide on, all of us must be comfortable that he has considered all factors before him, and that the decision that he's taking is not only rational, but it's a decision that is impossible to be undermined or to be weakened in one way or the other.
I guess some South Africans are concerned about the decisions the president makes and how rational they are, because sometimes he appears to be taking decisions that are in his political interests and not so much the interest of the country. Case in point, Arthur Fraser is in the State Security Agency. The president appoints a committee that is led by Dr. Sidney Mufamadi to go and investigate. It finds problematic things that Arthur Fraser has done in the State Security Agency. What does the president do? Appoints him Commissioner of Correctional Services. David Mahlobo, the same report the president commissioned, says this man played a critical role that was problematic, contributed to the decline of the State Security Agency. What does the president do? Appoints him Deputy Minister. Those don't seem like rational decisions to me. And by the way, these are questions I've asked the president before. The point I'm trying to make is we are waiting for the president who's asked for a report. But what says to South Africans that the same ANC that has made a commitment to ensure there's ethical leadership is actually going to act rationally through their deployee in parliament, the president?
Yeah, I think let me not weigh in on the issues you are referring to as your examples to justify your concerns about what in your own view constitute a rational or irrational decision.
Am I wrong though?
In the context of what the president has decided in the past.
Am I wrong? When someone...
I don't want to weigh into those, because I think those are the matters that the president himself or his office can deal with. The fact of the matter, Clement, is that you wouldn't want a head of state who, when he must take a decision on any matter, he leaves a lot of gray areas. You want a head of state that properly and truly apply his mind to the question at hand and arrive at a conclusion that can be defended not only by him, by the rest of society, given the facts that are presented before him and how he presented them to the nation to justify the position that he has taken. So I do think that, I think we need to give him a bit of time to reflect on the report. I don't know the report. I don't know when was it delivered to him. I don't know when he receives the report. What does he do with it? Does he write back and say, I don't agree, or I want more clarity? I don't know what processes unfold when the president has received a report like the one that should have come from the Minister of Higher Education.
If you are asked for your advice, what would you say to him? Given that you are the chief whip that spoke to the minister and you have found that she made misrepresentations, what would be the best way to act here?
In what way? If I were...
So if the president said, you are the chief whip, you spoke to this minister, Angel, what do you think is happening here? And you say misrepresented, right? You misrepresented facts there in parliament. She lied. What would be your advice to the president?
Well, my advice would be very clear.
Keep her in cabinet?
No, my advice would be to say, President, the facts before me are indicating that something terribly wrong has happened here. Facts were misrepresented in terms of what we understand to be an independent panel or not independent. So I believe that you've got to deal with this issue in any way that as a head of state you believe would be in the best interest of the government you lead and the people of South Africa.
How are you planning to respond to as the ANC to this decision by the DA that they won't be supporting departmental budgets of quote-unquote compromised cabinet ministers?
You see, Clement, one of the major threats to the GNU since its inception has been the Democratic Alliance and their inability to act rational and always be impulsive. The reason why they are taking that decision, the same ministers whose budget is the one to reject this year, they supported them wholeheartedly last year. The reason why they don't no longer support them now is not because of the reasons they are advancing in public. Those reasons may appear plausible, but they are not the reasons. This is a retaliation to the dismissal of the former Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield. Now, we're the African National Congress. We can't work on the basis of being retaliating to wrong things. The ANC is going to vote for all budgets in Parliament because the budget that we're voting for It's not a money that goes to the private account of the minister. It's not a money that the money that is going to be spent on the basis of what the minister says should or should not happen. If you vote for the budget, you don't vote for a budget on higher education. What are the implications on the infrastructure of the various universities in our country? What are the implications on the TVET colleges, where the majority of our people are starting, and they depend on the state intervention in order to continue to improve their living conditions and build a better life for all? So that position by the TA is clearly in contempt of our people. It's a direct in contempt of our people, while it is presented to the public as these defenders of what is right and what is ethically correct and what must be supported by the government.
Will you guys support budgets of departments led by DA ministers if they don't support budgets?
Sure, we will, Clement, because these budgets are not, agriculture is not John Steniers' budget. Public Works is not Macpherson's budget. It's a budget of the department from which he happens coincidentally or incidentally to be a minister. So the budget is an instrument of transformation at the disposal of the people of South Africa. If you don't support a budget, you, as I'm saying to you, you are essentially in contempt of the people of South Africa. And that's what the DA is doing.
And what must happen if the party in the GNU is in contempt?
It's a conversation that the ANC must deal with it, because there is a sustained strange conduct of the Democratic Alliance that continues to weaken not only the relationship between them and the ANC, but the GNU itself. All parties in the GNU are disciplined, they are focused on the work at hand, but you've got this one who always wants to be seen and want to present themselves as the best defenders of what is right and not right, and against what is not right in our country. It's a conduct of the TA that the GNU parties must reflect on and decide how to deal with it.
And yet, as the ANC, you still want to stick with the organization? Because this is not the first time you find yourself at this position where you are frustrated by them, and yet you've consistently decided we're going to stick with them. And I indicated last week that it's almost like the DA doesn't want to file divorce papers, you don't want to file divorce papers, but everybody can see that there's toxicity in this marriage. So who's going to act first?
Clement, this thing of the GNU, as you would understand, is a new reality. It's only a year old now. My own view has always been that we've got to find a way to deal with this one part within the government of national unity who always want to act irrational, who always want to act in a very impulsive way without really properly applying and applying its own mind and thinking about decisions that they are taking and its consequences to follow us. So we have always entertained the hope that with time the DA is going to understand that being a party in government is completely different from being a party in opposition. But when I listened to Helen Zille today, I must tell you, I was very, very uncomfortable when she insists publicly that they've taken a position to retain their own character as both a party in government and a party in opposition. I was very, very amazed by that. It has always been their conduct, but for her to say it boldly, openly like that, I think she is really inviting another way in which the ANC and the GNU parties must reflect on the presence and the contribution of the DA in the government of national unity.
If you were to vote on whether or not they must leave or stay the GNU, what would be your vote?
If I were to?
If you were to vote on whether or not the DA must stay in the GNU or leave, what would be your vote?
Whether they must stay or leave?
Yeah.
Well, my vote will be conditional. You stay in the GNU as long as you support the overall transformation agenda of our country. If you work against that agenda, as the DA seems to be doing now and again, and you are not willing to be persuaded, then you are a threat to the very same agenda that we seek to achieve as a country.
I mean, they've walked away from the national dialogue now.
Why would? Well, I don't think that is significant. I mean, the national dialogue is not about the TA. It's the people of South Africa who must come together and discuss about the country they want and the country they do not want. You see, in this country, Clement, there are different views about our own experience of the past 8 years. We need to have a conversation about that and have a common view about how to interpret the past, what has happened over the past 8 years, what is it that we want to consolidate and what is it that we want to do away with.
The tricky part,
we can do that even if the TA is not part of the national dialogue.
Not really, because you still need to go to parliament. I mean, if South Africans say we need constitutional changes, for instance, you need 2/3 majority in parliament, you are going to need all your partners in the GNU so that you're able to get the 60% majority that you need for any constitutional changes. So at the end of the day, you're going to need this party to pass some of the changes you may want to make.
Well, Clement, you are quite correct, but you know, not so long ago, people were saying to me, you are not going to pass the budget or fiscal framework if you don't have the TA on your side. But we went to Parliament, we engaged other political parties, they came on board, we were able to pass the fiscal framework. Even now, once South Africans have engaged on a comprehensive national dialogue and arrive at certain consensus, which requires our Parliament to act in a certain way, I'm quite convinced that the majority of parties in Parliament, who themselves are part of South Africa, would have participated in the process that produced that particular outcome. We'll definitely vote in favor of it, even if the TA is not supporting it.
All right. Mdumiseni Ntuli, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much, Clement.
Really appreciate your time. And we've been asking you this evening what you make of the actions by the DA and what you expect the president to do in as far as acting against the Minister of Higher Education. Some of your tweets have come through. Dear Pojek says, what the DA is doing is right to hold the minister accountable and face consequences of her actions. The president must fire her immediately to protect the integrity of the department. Rabotata says, the president is mandated to appoint ministers or deputy ministers. The president is afraid to fire ANC ministers. Nkabane must be fired. She's arrogant and disrespectful. Mohale says, the DA is absolutely correct here. The minister is an embarrassment, not only to the ANC or to the president, but to the nation as a whole. If the president does not remove these characters from cabinet, South Africans must completely remove the ANC from power. Thank you so much for your tweets. After the break, we'll be speaking to the Minister of Media and Information in Zambia, and I'll be asking why they are pushing for the former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, to be buried in Zambia when his family seemingly wants him to be buried here in South Africa. That conversation coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. A bitter standoff between the family of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu and President Hakainde Hichilema's government continues. The two sides are locked in a heated dispute over the late leader's burial arrangements. The High Court in Pretoria last week halted funeral plans after the Zambian government launched a legal bid to block the ceremony. Weeks after his death on June 5, Lungu's final resting place remains unresolved. Cornelius Mweetwa is the Minister of Information and Media in Zambia and joins us now via video link. Minister Mweetwa, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and thank you for having me on the program.
So, since the court ruling, when you successfully interdicted those funeral plans, have you, as the Zambian government, had any meetings with the former president's family to try and find some common ground?
Well, I would like to place on record here that at that time of that decision by the courts, the government for the Republic of Zambia has moved on in line with the desires of the people of Zambia. And also, I believe the people of the region, particularly also the people of South Africa, as represented by the two ministers of South Africa, the minister in the office of the presidency and the foreign affairs minister, who expressed their desire that this matter be resolved expeditiously and amicably, taking advantage of this window of opportunity that has been created by this court, action, whose return date is 4th of August 2025. The government of the Republic of Zambia, acting through the Attorney General, who is a government lawyer, and through their lawyers in South Africa, has commenced correspondence between the two parties by way of the two parties' lawyers beginning to exchange communication with a view to having this matter settled ex curia in a manner that is amicable and expeditious and in line with the wishes of the people of Zambia, the majority of them, and the desires of the government of the Republic of Zambia, by President Hakainde.
Yeah. What are you willing to compromise on as the government of Zambia, as you say that discussions will begin with various parties so that the matter can be resolved expeditiously in an amicable manner, but the family still to be standing on their position that if ever they would even agree for the former Zambian president to be buried in Zambia, they wouldn't want President Hichilema to preside over the funeral. Is that something you're willing to compromise on as the Zambian government, or is that a red line that you're not willing to cross?
Well, for now, we've opened a new chapter, a discourse surrounding this particular impasse. And we do believe that this whole transaction process has and will and is bound to assume a new complexion going forward, given the views of the citizens of Zambia, the views of the leadership, for Zambia, their desires that the former president for the Republic of Zambia be buried home in line with the precedents and tradition that we have set ourselves, like the 5 former presidents of Zambia who have passed on have all been buried at the presidential burial site, which is an important place for us as citizens for Zambia, given its present and historical importance going forward as a symbol of national identity and unity going forward. So regarding the question of a particular demand, presently we hold the view that that will be subject of discussion, given that we as government now are pushing in the direction of alternative dispute resolution mechanism, and responses have already been exchanged as between the two parties, lawyers, signifying commencement of a new process, which it is hoped can bring this matter finality and closure before the court can return to its adjudication, something we believe is going to give more integrity and credibility that as a people, when confronted with a problem, we are capable of analyzing that problem in terms of prescribing solutions that should be as a result of a convergence of consensus as a people, and not just the court prescribing what they believe is right for us, notwithstanding that presently is also still in force.
Yeah, so what was the, because from what I've picked up, at least from my understanding from the family side, is that there was never truly enough support from government when the former president was sick, even when he had to be transported to South Africa for medical treatment. So they're surprised that suddenly the government of Zambia is willing to avail a private jet to then take the remains of the former president to be buried in Zambia. They've raised issues around his presidential benefits having been revoked as well. What's your explanation on that as the government of Zambia?
Well, I would like to place on record that the former president, Zambia's sixth president, Edgar, resigned from active politics on the 26th of August 2021 upon transition of power to the new administration of President Hakainde Hichilema. And from that date to the 28th of October 2023, he was a former president. And in terms of the former president's benefits Act, Chapter 15 of the laws of Zambia, at Section 4, there is a conferment of entitlements that the law creates and grants to a former president to enjoy in retirement, such as transport, security, office space. It is a whole list of those entitlements to make comfortable the stay of a former president so that they can live a dignified life as somebody who served their country at that higher level. Now, once the former president announced on the 28th of October 2023 his decision to return to active politics, then that, by operation of law, triggered the requirement that in terms of the secretary to cabinet, who is the head of the civil service, by 3rd of November, did write to the former president indicating his new status in relation to the enjoyment of those benefits that are a conferment of law and not those who are in office, and that those entitlements cannot be taken away by any leaders presently in government at the behest of their whims and caprices or choice. They are a provision of the law as by law established. So once, therefore, you return to active politics, the same law in terms of Section 5 of the former President's Benefit Act, Chapter 15 of the laws of Zambia, dictate that you forfeit those particular entitlements from enjoying them. And that is exactly what turned out to be. And I would like to indicate here that this is not the first time that we have seen a former president actually go into retirement of politics, enjoy those benefits, and upon return to active politics, forfeit those benefits. That is exactly what transpired with the former president, the late Rupia Banda, when his party then, the MMD, announced him as coming back to active politics. The former administration of the late President Edgar Lungu announced to the nation that by operation of the law in terms of former President's Benefit Act, those entitlements that were being enjoyed by the former president had to be taken away in recognition and pursuant of the application of the law to the latter. So this particular matter is pretty precedented. And I must also here indicate that former President Edgar Lungu has set a precedent in this country that since independence, we have had 6 former presidents in terms of the numbers of those who have graced that high office. In terms of those who have outlived their presidents in office, he is the very first and only one this far to have lived and now sadly passed on with his presidential immunity against persecution intact. The current president, President Edgar, had to take this in his stride and in keeping with national interest to ensure that the nation turned a new page away from the ceremony that each time you change a party in government, then the former president becomes now a regular guest at police stations or courts. Former President Edgar Lungu never was called by police, not even through a call-out. He never went to any police station for investigations or inquiries. He never went to any government security agency for interviews. He never pressed any courts of law. Him and him alone, in line with the law conferred to him in terms of presidential immunity, which is Article 98 of the Republic of Zambia. He has enjoyed his immunity to the latter. I can now say that many citizens actually are shocked by some of the permutations and assertions that have been given out there by our colleagues, particularly to the international media. That is the reason why when you check, when they come back home, they rarely engage the media, because they know that back home, people know that the misinformation they've been channeling out there cannot be sustained at home.
I got it. Thank you so much. We're out of time, but I appreciate you making time for us this evening on Face the Nation. That's Cornelius Mweetwa, the Minister of Information and Media in Zambia, joining us via video link. It's quite a tricky one, because what trumps what, right? You've got government that believes, well, public interest trumps family's interest, because the family says, but what if we're acting on the wishes of the former president? So is it the family interest that trumps public interest, or is it vice versa? Let's hope that there'll be some resolution as the two parties start their negotiations. After the break, we're going to speak to SCOPA's Chairperson, Songezo Zibi. There's that inquiry into the road accident fund that's going to begin. So what's the scope of reference? You'll talk to us about that after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts has adopted the terms of reference for the inquiry into the Road Accident Fund's financial matters. The inquiry follows allegations of maladministration, financial impropriety and the misuse of public funds at the Road Accident Fund. This inquiry will cover, we're told, the financial years from 2020 to 2025, and it's set to begin in mid-September. For more on this, I'm joined by SCOPA Chairperson Songezo Zibi. Songezo, thank you for making time. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and thanks for having me.
So where are you going to be zoning in on here? Are you looking at the ministerial oversight? Are you looking at the board's oversight? Are you focusing more on the executives? What's your focus as SCOPA?
So it's throughout. We're going to look at ministerial oversight over the board because ministers interact with the board and not with the executive, and then the board's oversight over the executive and management at the Road Accident Fund. But we're also going to look at financial, in fact, chiefly at financial matters, so even to the extent where we're looking at other issues such as the new organogram or the organogram that is in effect now and the vacancies and so on. In the end, we're looking at the financial impact there too. We're going to look at the claims process, the legal, the court litigation, the legal costs management, and so on. So in the end, almost everything that we're looking at it with the lens of the impact on public funds.
Okay. And speaking of the board, because I mean, they first placed the RAF CEO on special leave, and then they rescinded that based on legal advice. And then they decided to make a suspension. I mean, and I was thinking there's no question that the board in some way mishandled that suspension. I think they admitted to that effect. Will that decision and how they acted around this special leave / suspension, will that be also the focus of this investigation, or you are purely focusing on, as you say, some of the financial mismanagement matters?
No, that issue is fairly insignificant in the context of what we're doing. And let me explain why, Clement. We're looking at, for instance, alleged impropriety around contracts involving over R1 billion, for instance. We're looking at cost escalations in terms of default judgments, in terms of writ costs and so on, clearing between 5 and 6 billion rand. We are looking at the failure of the Road Accident Fund to tell us exactly where they've invested public funds whose amount is unknown, and they declined to do that to the committee. The matter of the suspension of special leave of the CEO arose actually because these were the matters we wanted to interrogate, and he turned down the opportunity to come to Parliament. So I'm sorry, I know it's gained a lot of attention, but to be honest with you, it's almost insignificant in comparison to the issues that we want to look at.
So on the issue of legal and litigation expenditure, is this about the termination of the services of the panel of attorneys? Because there were default judgments that would result in inflated claims would not be properly scrutinized. Then you get default judgments because there's not really legal capacity at the Road Accident Fund. Is that what the legal and litigation expenditure is mostly focused on, that aspect?
There are two sides to it. So the Road Accident Fund simply does not defend matters in court. They simply don't. And then what happens is that once the award has been made, and if somebody would otherwise get a payout, let's say of R1 million, if the matter had been defended, if they claim for 5 million, they get it. And then the Road Accident Fund does not pay them following that court order. It accumulates interest, which is irregular, which is a wasteful and fruitless expenditure because they're not supposed to accumulate that much. They then apply to court. The court gets upset with them, slaps them with costs, which is further fruitless expenditure. So that's the one side of it, and that amounts to billions of rand. Then you also get the second part, which is an allegation. The chief executive of the Road Accident Fund is alleged, gave us a list of law firms. He said they've fleeced the Road Accident Fund. We want evidence. And if that evidence stands up to scrutiny, we want that money to be recovered. Yeah. But we can't have a situation where the interview is given and no action taken.
Yeah, and I mean, the SIU, from my understanding, is that it claimed about 4.7 billion rand is how much is actually costing the Road Accident Fund in those default judgments, as you explained. Will the CEO of the Road Accident Fund come? Will you be calling him to come as well and testify? Because what he told us on Face the Nation last week was that, yeah, there's a lot of noise about 4.7 billion rand that's costing the road accident fund, but the reality is he's managed to save about 30 billion rand in legal fees for the road accident fund.
I am looking forward to Mr. Letsolo appearing before our committee under oath. That's all I will say. I was very disappointed that he refused to come last time, really disappointed. And I see that he turned up at the Portfolio Committee on Transport despite telling us that he's got concerns about coming to Parliament. He sent me a lawyer's letter. We will subpoena him if he refuses to come, but he must come.
Okay, and just lastly, this inquiry, obviously it's more inquisitory rather than adversarial. So how will this help in finding out what really hasn't worked at the road accident fund? Does this kind of a process have its own limitations?
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we want to look at the fundamental and systemic issues. So, for instance, we're not just going to look at who should have done what. We need to look at what went wrong with the claims process, for instance. How should it work? And what is it that is not broken, and therefore why is it costing so much money? And what is the best way that it works? Because the committee has to come up with recommendations in the end that are going to solve the problem and save taxpayers' money. Otherwise, for the Public Accounts Committee, if we can't end up there, then the exercise is wasted. So we are going to make proposals in the end.
Okay, Songezo Zibi, let me thank you for making time for us. He's the SCOPA Chairperson. I really appreciate your time this evening on Face the Nation. All right, let's wrap up with perhaps just maybe 2 or so of the WhatsApp voice notes that have come through responding to the question we've been asking tonight about the action the DA has taken to lay these criminal complaints against the Minister of Higher Education. What do you make of that decision, and what do you expect the President to do here? How should he act against the Minister of Higher Education? Here's what some of you have had to say on the WhatsApp line.
Hello, Clement. I think the fact that the ANC itself has referred the matter to the Ethics Committee of Parliament, the fact that the President has asked for explanations, and the DA taking action legally with all of these various initiatives to hold the disgraced minister to account. Surely it's time for her to step aside and face the consequences of her complete disregard of the rules of Parliament and the laws of the land. Thanks for the great show. Dimitri from Johannesburg.
Sam Alokotriko Pislamen Dumela. The minister must do the right thing by stepping down if she does not want to be thrown away. She does not even respect the public. How do you behave like that on a television? I did not know why DA wants her gone. I also support DA. She is not ethical and she does not even show remorse for her actions. She lacks the principles of right and wrong that govern a person's behavior or conduct. Bye-bye.
Well, the ball is now in the President's court. What is he going to do? Is he going to take action, prioritize what a lot of South Africans are expecting of her to take action against what clearly, even among ANC members of Parliament and ANC leaders, clearly was an egregious act and a belligerent attitude by the minister towards Parliament. So what is he going to do? We wait and see, Mr. President. Thank you so much for watching the Tuesday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.